I'd like to welcome you to our presentation about learning how the Vermont Attorney General's Consumer Assistance Program can help support small businesses. As general housekeeping, like I mentioned, we are currently recording. We ask you to mute yourselves when you're not speaking, and you already have your names shown, so thank you for doing so. Please throw your questions in the chat if you have them throughout the presentation, but we'll also allot some time at the end where we can have an open discussion. And after the workshop, I will send all of this information and more, including all the resources that we will go over, contact information for my colleagues, and a copy of this presentation. So without further ado, I'd like to welcome my colleague, Simeon Geiger.
Good morning, everyone. Thanks so much for showing up for our virtual meeting today, and I'm thrilled that Emily can join us. Before I introduce Emily, I'd just like to give a quick introduction to the Microbusiness Development Program, as well as some additional business resources. So the Microbusiness Development Program is a statewide program that works with low to moderate income Vermonters around the state to help them start or expand a business. There are no fees for our services as long as folks meet our income eligibility guidelines. And so if you're interested in learning if you are eligible, please feel free to reach out to myself, John Gergley, or Pacific Sangayuva, and we'll be happy to determine that. It's just a couple of quick questions for you. And most of the work that we do is one-on-one with folks, generally over phone or Zoom. And obviously we offer classes as well. So in a nutshell, we help people write business plans, marketing plans, answer general business questions, help people try to access financing for their business, troubleshoot issues, etc. So people come into us at all different points along the spectrum of business, and we are happy to work with them regardless of where they're at in the process. So as I mentioned, microbusiness is a statewide program, and each microbusiness is part of a larger organization called a community action agency. And each microbusiness covers a certain set of counties around the state that provides total coverage. And so you can see on this list the different micro businesses and the counties that they serve with their contact information. Although I will note that Margaret Ferguson at Capstone is not the contact person there at this point, and we can update that. You will get this list as part of the information that Sophia will be providing to you as a follow-up email to this class. And for more information, would you mind just popping back to the last slide, Sophia? Thanks. And just for more information about the statewide microbusiness, you can see the mbdp.org website below, and there you can also identify the counselor that covers your territory if you wanted to reach out to them directly. Thanks, Sophia. So there is other support for businesses. These, I don't know where everybody is coming from that's joining us today. So these support services, some of them cover the state, but some of them cover the kind of the Burlington area, Chittenden area as well. So you can see that we have CEDO, which covers specifically Burlington and people that want to start businesses or are operating businesses. In Burlington, Center for Women in Enterprise, Mercy Connections, the Vermont Small Business Development Center, the SBA. This is a national website, and of course, locally, the SCORE chapter, Champlain Valley SCORE in our area. Finally, without further ado, I'd like to welcome Emily McDonnell, excuse me. She is the small business advocate with the Attorney General's office, and I'm really interested to learn more about what she has to say on the various topics that she's going to be discussing. We haven't had Emily present before, so this is new for us as well, and we're really looking forward to having her speak and learn more about what her program does and how it benefits small businesses. So Emily McDonnell, thank you so much for joining us today.
Awesome. Thank you so much, Simeon and Sophia. It's great to see you all and to meet you all. Again, my name is Emily McDonnell, and I'm the small business advocate at the Vermont Attorney General's Consumer Assistance Program. I'm going to share my screen and get my presentation up. Let me make sure Can everyone see my presentation right now? Should say small business initiative. Awesome.
Yes.
Before I go any further, I love when I have a smaller group of people. I would love for this presentation to be as interactive as you would all like it to be. So please feel free. I'll make sure I have sort of some stopping points so that we can answer any questions you might have. But if you have a question that pops up, feel free to type it in the chat or even just turn your microphone on and ask the question. I'm really happy to kind of stop and further explain or answer any questions, field any concerns as we move along here. I certainly welcome it, especially with a smaller group of people. So I am here today to talk about the Small Business Initiative at the Attorney General's office, and I'm going to talk about the Consumer Assistance Program. Before we go any further, and I will repeat this information, we'll make sure that you have this information at the end of the presentation, but we have a very small office and I am one of one in my role. And so for anything that we talk about today, the best person to contact is going to be myself. You can call the Consumer Assistance Program at any time. We actually have people who field calls all day, so that can get directed to me. That's 800-649-2424. And of course, you can email me at any time. My email is ago.smallbusiness@vermont.gov. And again, I'm the small business advocate in the office. So I just want to make sure that that communication stays open for as long as it needs to. I am here to answer questions really at any time. So I want to talk about the Consumer Assistance Program and what it has to do with small businesses. You're going to hear me refer to the Consumer Assistance Program as CAP. I think that's how a lot of people are familiar with us, maybe if you are familiar. So when I say CAP, I mean the Consumer Assistance Program, and that's where I work. CAP is a partnership between the Attorney General's office and the University of Vermont. It's been a partnership for about 40 years, if you can believe it. And so we sit basically in between as a joint program between the Attorney General's office and a department at UVM called Community Development and Applied Economics. And so CAP really is often referred to as kind of like the boots on the ground leg of the Attorney General's office. We are front facing. Usually if you call the AG's office, you're going to be talking to us, to CAP, and our focus really and truly is on service and is on community development. So we really want to make it clear that we are here to help everyone. And today specifically, I get to talk about how we're helping small businesses. So I will explain a little bit further when a small business is considered a consumer. But in Vermont, small businesses are protected as consumers. And so for all of the services that we offer to individuals, we also offer to small businesses. And this is exactly what I will be talking about today. We offer consumer complaint mediation for small businesses, scam reporting and resources, cybersecurity resources. And then we also provide information and answers to common questions in the consumer domain for small businesses. And this is exactly what I'm going to be going into today. Does anyone have questions about what the Consumer Assistance Program is or how it relates to the Attorney General's office? Awesome. I will move right along here. So here's some wordy piece of a statute for you, but I think it's really important to frame our conversation. Like I mentioned before, this is not the case everywhere in the United States, but it is certainly the case in Vermont. Businesses are protected as consumers under the Consumer Protection Statute. I think this is really important in Vermont. What we know is that most small business owners are running as, a business just themselves, or maybe with a few employees, and that they really become vulnerable to all of the things that consumers are vulnerable to. So in the state of Vermont, we protect businesses as consumers. I don't need to read the statute for you, but you are welcome to read more into it. I have included a link here, and you'll get a copy of this presentation at the end. So if you're curious, you can read much more about this. But, you know, this reads that a consumer is basically a person who purchases, leases, contracts for, or otherwise agrees to pay consideration for goods and services not for the resale in the ordinary course of a person's trade or business, or for the use or benefit of a person's business, or in connection with the operation of a person's business. A little wordy, as you can see. But that basically means that when a business purchases something, anything for their business that's not directly for resale, that is considered a consumer transaction. I always give the really oversimplified example of, if you are a small business and you want to purchase paper towels for the bathrooms of your business, that's an example of when you'd be a consumer. So if you purchase paper towels from papertowels.com, you would be the consumer in the transaction, and you would be protected as a consumer. So we're going to talk about complaint mediation, which is essentially when a consumer transaction goes wrong some way. Our office at CAP, we offer a neutral letter mediation service for consumers who have problems. And again, this is a service for individuals and also for small businesses, but I get to deal with the small business complaints. I didn't talk about it at the top, but I think it's really important to mention, obviously, every service that we offer is free. This is a free service that we offer to small businesses to help try to solve some of these problems. So what exactly is complaint mediation? We'll continue on with our paper towel example, right? If you're a small business and you order 10 rolls of paper towels from papertowels.com and you only get 5 in the mail, and you reach out to papertowels.com and you say, hey, you know, I ordered 10 rolls and I only received 5 rolls, you know, can I either get my money back or could I get 5 more rolls? And they don't respond to you, or they say, nope, we're taking your money, sorry. That would be a really good example of something that you could come to our office and you could say, Emily, this is what happened, can you please help? And what we would do is initiate a complaint mediation. So we ask you to file a complaint. Tell us what happened, right? I ordered 10 rolls of paper towels. I only received 5. And the really important feature here is we ask, how do you want this to be resolved? How can we help you, right? And maybe you would say, I either want papertowels.com to send me the 5 more rolls that I need, or I want a refund, right? And essentially what we do is initiate that mediation. We're going to talk more exactly how that works. But I think before we go into that, it's really helpful to look at the types of complaints we mediate. I wish every complaint we mediated was as simple as the paper towel analogy. It never is, right? And so in 2022, here were some of the most popular types of complaints we mediated. And I think this might be good to keep in mind, whether you're actively a small business or you're thinking of starting a small business. These are trends that we track. And I think it can be important to consider, so you can be thinking about, oh, these are some of the things that maybe go wrong when you're operating a small business, or these are things to be extra wary of, right? These are the issues that small businesses were coming to our office with last year. The 2 highest being banking, credit and finance, and retail. Banking, credit and finance, think about payment processing, or like a credit card processing company, right? Think about if you're hiring a service to do your payroll. Think about maybe a money transaction service, right? Like PayPal or Venmo or something else you might use for your business. We saw a lot of issues going on there. I think especially with credit card processors, we saw a lot of consumer complaints coming in. Retail, that's that paper towel example, right? We say for there are goods and services, right? When you're looking at consumerism, that would be sort of the goods side. So anything you're purchasing for your business. you'll see on here construction and motor vehicles. This is consistently by far, right? This is the information we have for small businesses. When we look broader and we look at the whole of the consumer assistance program for individuals, construction and motor vehicles are always at the top of that list, right? And businesses are certainly not exempt from that. Construction, for individuals, it would be home improvement, right? So issues with a contractor, if you're having work being done on your business in any way, we see that is really consistently a consumer issue for individuals and for small businesses. And motor vehicles, if you purchase a commercial vehicle, we see a lot of consumer issues with auto dealerships and the purchasing of a vehicle for your business. General services, again, the goods and services side of consumerism. This would be like if you were to hire a company to complete a service for you. So think about like if you hired a photographer for your business, if you hired someone to do like a short-term project, we see that there can be some issues going on with that. And entertainment, we saw rise during the pandemic, right? Because a lot of businesses were taking their business online. So think about like a website contract. Think about if you're having an issue with your Facebook, your business Facebook page will mediate complaints with Facebook, right? So there are, those were the most popular. There are so many more, right? What we see with small businesses is every issue is individual and a lot of these issues are different. So we really don't discriminate when it comes to what we'll help you with in terms of consumerism. Some other ones, food, fuel, housing and real estate, direct marketing, delivery, moving and storage, internet, publications, agricultural goods, right? The list really goes on and on. There are many more complaint topics we've assisted with, but I really like to give these examples because I hope that it helps to frame the types of problems that we're here to help small businesses with. So we can talk more about how this complaint mediation works. I mentioned this before. We have businesses who might have a problem like this, right? So we'll take the paper towel example. This happens, you're looking for a refund or to get the product that you ordered, and you've tried to contact the business, you've tried to contact papertowels.com and they're not responding to you, they're not being helpful, you can't get in contact with the right person. And so you can file a complaint with our office. You can file this online by emailing us. There's a couple different ways to do it. And what we ask is for a brief description of the complaint. So tell us what went wrong. What did you try to buy and how did it not work? And again, we ask for how would you like this to be resolved? How can we help you, right? What is the solution here? What would you like to see happen? And what we do is we take that complaint, we file it on our public record, which is an internal public record, right? Not like the Better Business Bureau where you could type in the name and the complaint and it would pop up. Is an internal record that we use. It's how we got, if you think about it, right, this information, it's how we track information so we can better understand what issues are going on year to year. It's also how we're able to communicate with the rest of the Attorney General's office. So if I received 35 complaints against, papertowels.com or whatever the business is, that might help us to raise some flags to say, hey, maybe someone else in the Attorney General's office might want to look into this because it seems like there's this trend that we've been tracking. And that's a really big part of how this complaint mediation works, right? So we take your complaint, we process it in our office, and what we do is we take your complaint and we take a official letter from the Attorney General's office, right? It's got that Attorney General letterhead, and we send it off to the business named in the complaint. And we say, hey, we have this complaint on file in our office. Here's X, Y, and Z problem. Here's how we'd like to see it resolved. Can you respond to us and help us to start a communication so that we can understand what's going on and find a resolution, find a compromise, right? So our mediation process is really around sharing information. We want both parties to understand each other. I notice quite a bit. There's sort of, I feel like there's two categories in terms of the response that we get from businesses. I think that one of the ways that this mediation is effective is when you're working with a really big company. I'm talking huge, right? Think about like Facebook or Google or a really, really large company. When you have a problem with your small business, something went wrong, they overcharged you or something isn't working. A lot of times it can seem impossible to get in contact with the right person to help you, right? When a company is so big and you can't get a hold of a real person when you're talking on the phone because it's an automated response or something like that, it can be really frustrating and it can leave you, not being able to solve your problem. And I think that one of the ways that our mediation works is that when a big giant company gets a letter from a state attorney general's office, we oftentimes have like specific contacts that we can use. We've communicated before, so we're really able to field your complaint to the right place. And that can be really meaningful and help to solve the problem really quickly, because a lot of times it's not that the business doesn't want you to, get your money back or get your product or be a happy consumer. It's that they don't even know that your complaint exists because they're too big, right, to handle the sort of customer service aspect. So I noticed that's one bucket, and that's an efficient way that we're able to resolve these types of complaints. I think the second group that we see primarily is maybe you have a complaint with another small business. Maybe it's another Vermont small business, right? And perhaps you've addressed the issue, but maybe they're overwhelmed. They don't have the capacity to deal with it. They just kind of think you're going to go away. Going through our office to start the communication process, I think it kind of evens the playing field, right? Sometimes we'll see that communication might go sour, right? If there's been some kind of issue between two small businesses, it can be really difficult to communicate. And what this does is allow like both voices to be heard. And I think it allows communication to happen in a more formal way that can be really helpful. And we see that we see the success of that really works. It tends to be a great way to field communication. So that's how the mediation works, right? We go back and forth. It's a letter mediation process, usually through email these days. And so we have people go back and forth until we've reached that resolution. So both businesses work together to reach the resolution. And if the business doesn't respond favorably, I will talk about this in the next slide. Most of the time we see a resolution, and if we don't, we make sure we give you plenty of resources if we can't help you solve your problem. So that might be a referral to a private attorney, to small claims court, to some of the other resources that are available for small businesses. That was a lot of information. I talked about what complaint mediation is. I think it's also important to reiterate what complaint mediation is not. Complaint mediation isn't a legal process, right? I'm not an attorney. None of the mediators in our office are attorneys or police officers, law enforcement. We can't provide legal advice or representation, right? We're not acting as an attorney, we act as a mediator. And our goal in CAP, again, we're community focused. Our goal is to facilitate communication, to seek resolutions, and it's not to force a response, take an action, take a particular side and demand that a business return money or say, we're going to come after you if that's the case. It's not what we do in our office, again, because it's a civil process. I think a really good example to help to separate kind of what you might want to go through legal process versus what might be appropriate for our office. I was recently working with a small business who had a commercial landlord-tenant issue. So they were the tenant, and they paid a deposit, they paid a couple of months rent, and they had an issue in between the landlord and themselves, and they were not able to open up their business. And so they paid for rent, but they were not able to open up their business. They had a dispute, an issue, and the relationship ended up going sour. Now, if this business had wanted a refund for their deposit and the money that they may have given directly to the landlord, that would be a great example of what we could help mediate for, right? Because they paid the landlord something and they didn't get what they wanted. They didn't get to move into the space and open their business. This particular small business was really looking to seek financial damages, right? They said, we want first, I want the money back that we paid, but also this caused me a lot of emotional stress. And I really want the landlord to give me $50,000 because I lost business and this caused me a lot of stress and I had to spend a lot of time trying to find something else. And we do our best to support small businesses and to say, you deserve to do that if that's what you want. But that would be something that would be really ripe for a private attorney to help get, something like financial damages or something that really is a legal process, right? I want them to be held accountable. I want them to have their license removed. Something like that really would be best for a private attorney, for small claims court, for a process that is a legal process, right? Whereas this is a really good example for civil issues, right? If that small business had come to me and said, I don't want to have to pay the rent because I wasn't able to go in there. They didn't let me in. We had this type of issue. That would be a great example of something that we could help with in our office. So I think that people have this question a lot, which is, well, if you're not a legal process, if you can't demand that a business respond, then how does this even work, right? Why should I even file a complaint? This is in 2022, this is our success that we saw last year with small business complaints. We had a 66.7% resolution rate. So 66.7% of all of the complaints that came into our office were resolved. People got their money back, people got the services that they wanted. They left with some type of resolution. When we look at the areas in where we weren't able to resolve, we see about 26.7% were unable to resolve. These would be issues. There's a couple different reasons why we might not be able to resolve something in our office. I think that the most common is what we call a dispute of facts. So let's say that there was a small business and they wanted to work with a contractor and they did something like a handshake deal. So the contractor said, I'm going to do this work for X amount of money, no contract, no evidence, nothing to look back on. They just had a verbal agreement. And then the work wasn't done to the quality that the small business wanted. And so they filed a complaint with our office, but then the contractor said, well, that's not what I said this, or something like that. When there's when we don't have the ability to look at like documentation or to see sort of like clear lines, when there's that, again, it's called a dispute of facts. When someone says one thing and someone says another thing, probably be a really good example of something that we would end up referring on to something like small claims court, a private attorney, something where someone can draw some harsher lines, right? So that's when we see something that isn't able to be resolved. And again, we try to work really quickly to determine when something is going to be resolved or not. We want to help people as quickly as possible. And if we can identify that, oh, maybe our office isn't the best to help you, we want to make sure that you have all of the resources you need to be helped. You'll see about 6% of a no response rate. I'm really proud of this number, to be honest with you. Like I said, mediate 100% of the business complaints that come in, and I really work hard to get businesses to respond to our office. There is a small percentage where they don't. A lot of times this is because a business goes out of business, they're seasonal, there's some issue with the how we're getting the documentation to them. And again, this would be referred to something like small claims court or a private attorney if we cannot get a response from a business. That was so much information on complaint mediation, and I would love to take any questions you have before we move on. And I do see maybe a question in the chat, I think, maybe not, I can't see it exactly. I don't know if Simeon wants to read that, Sophia.
It was just a message from Simeon to throw questions in the chat.
I was just prompting people, but I have a couple of questions, Emily, that came up during your presentation, if you're able to answer them. You mentioned that you work with businesses. Does it matter if the business is registered and operated as an LLC or a corporation versus maybe a sole proprietor?
It does not matter. We help, I think that a small business is under 500 employees. So as long as you're under 500 employees, we will help you. We've even helped, people who like sell things on eBay, right? They're not a registered business at all, but maybe they have like a side hustle, or they sell things on Facebook Marketplace, or anything where obviously when you're the consumer in general, and if it's that small, maybe I would have someone else in the office mediate, but we really we help most people with most things. So you do not need to be registered as a particular business. As long as you have under 500 employees, we will help you.
Okay, and maybe you'll cover this later, but is there specific information that you ask of people, like if they're sending in an application for your assistance that they have to provide?
There is no particular information other than obviously basic information like your name and a way to contact you. And we also need the name of the business and a way to contact the business. And that's pretty much it. I have done a lot of internet sleuthing to find proper contacts for other businesses as well. So that's a little bit less important, but those are the two pieces of information that we need. And then of course, a description of your complaint and how you would like your complaint to be resolved.
Is there a preferred way that you want people to contact you?
So I would say the easiest way to file a complaint is through our website. I make sure I have a link to it later on in the presentation. But we take complaints, mail, email, basically anyway, and it's a form that you can fill out. And so that's our preference. And again, that just really helps for when we're filing things. And I will make sure that there is a link to our website so that you know how you can file that complaint. And I've said it before, and I will definitely say it again in this presentation, but you can also email me and I'd be happy to send you a complaint form or talk to you more about that complaint mediation.
Okay, great. Rhonda posted a question in the chat box here, and she says, you mentioned that these services may be available to people of certain financial criteria. Can you elaborate on that?
So our services are available to everyone. It doesn't matter. We don't collect financial information or anything like that. It's a free service to all Vermonters, or we need one party to be in Vermont actually. So if one of the parties is in Vermont, we can help. And we don't have, it's no cost, and we don't even ask for financial information. We just assist as many people as possible.
Okay. And
I hope that answers the question.
Yes, I think it does, because she just posted, okay, great. I must have misunderstood. Thank you.
No problem. I think maybe because when you all were talking about your services, I know that you provide services to low and medium income folks. So maybe
right.
that's what it was. But yeah, we don't we help anyone really. Yeah.
Okay. Great. I have a couple more questions that might be a little bit in the weeds, but they did
occur. Yeah, let's get in the weeds. I'm happy to
do. When you were identifying some of the types of businesses, that categories that have the highest amount of complaints, you mentioned for automobiles. So I just want to single that out for a minute.
Yes.
And would your services still apply if somebody purchased an automobile through a private sale versus a dealership?
That is a great question. If it's a private sale, being like, I sold my car independently to you, Simeon, then I think we still take the complaint. I will say it is very, very difficult to mediate those types of complaints, as you can imagine, because it's a private sale to a private sale. And we typically don't mediate like person-to-person complaints, if that makes sense. Like if you had a dispute with another individual, that would not be appropriate for our office, because it's primarily focused around consumers and businesses. Now, there's a lot of, we'll see, there's a lot of gray area, right? Because I think that it's something like, if you sell 10 or more cars a year, you're considered to be an auto business. Like there's some really specific.
There is, yeah.
Yeah, so a great example of how we would look at this in our office, I would say, for the most part, if you have a consumer complaint and send it into our office, we'll take a look. And again, one of the main things that we're really pushing right now is we only want to take complaints where we're really going to be able to help. We don't want to waste anyone's time if our office is not best suited to assist. And so a large part of what we're doing is reading the complaints and say, oh, you know what, this is going to be best suit. We're really not, we don't have the capacity, or capacity maybe isn't the right word. Our resources aren't best for this particular issue. And we want to make sure that we're getting that person into the best place, right? So that would be something we would likely take a look at. We'd maybe discuss it in our office, make sure it's right for mediation, or if it's not, give those resources out.
Gotcha. Okay. For those whose their first language is not English, does your office offer interpretive services?
Yes, we have full interpretive services. We are working, we're trying to develop a grant right now to actually get our like all of our website into different languages, but we have access to a translator over the phone, which is the primary way that we communicate, aside from email correspondence. And so we do have a translator services available.
Okay, great.
Yeah.
I'm curious, like on average, if somebody's like case is something that you feel you determine you can work with and help with, but what is the average amount of time somebody can expect to commit to this process, whether or not they get a resolution or not?
It's a great question. It's really dependent, excuse me. It's really dependent on how quickly the business responds. We ask a business to respond to us within 10 days of them receiving correspondence from us. And we'll send up to 3 letters to a business if they don't respond. So that would be like 10 days, 10 days, 10 days. So it really, sometimes we open a complaint and close it in a week. Sometimes we send 3 letters to a business over the course of a month and they don't respond. We always, we wait at least 90 days, I believe, before we close a complaint, unless a consumer responds to us. So it's really, really dependent. I mean, I've had cases that I've mediated for 3 months, depending on how intricate the situation is, right? If there's like sort of multiple parties involved. I've had complaints I've actively mediated for quite some time. I've had complaints that are open and closed in a week because the business just says, oh yeah, let me refund you, sorry about that, right? So it is dependent on the business, but we do have a process, again, where we really want to, if we're not going to be able to help you, let's get you through the process as quickly as possible so that we can get you moved along to have your problem be solved as soon as possible.
Okay. I'm sorry if I missed this, but if a business responds directly to the client, let's say, that contacted you initially, is that how it typically goes, or are they responding to your office, who is then passing along the communication?
Primarily, we ask the business to do both. So we say, hey, here's this complaint, reach out to the consumer and update our office. We, of course, we understand that sometimes maybe our relationship has soured so much where you as the consumer you don't want to talk to the business, or you don't feel comfortable having the business contact you again. We have options. We have letters in which we say, please only respond back to our office so that they can be excluded from the communication if that's what's most comfortable for them. But because it's centered around sharing communication, we really encourage through our office, right, to connect that communication directly to the consumer.
Okay, great. My last question, I'm just curious, how many complaints on average do you field in a year?
Oh, it's a good question, and I should have this answer, and I don't off the top of my head for some reason. I'm gonna have to write that down and get that back to you.
Okay, I was just curious. It's fine.
Yeah, it is. It's so interesting. It really fluctuates month to month, which is really interesting. Like right now, I probably have about 15 complaints open, but I've also closed a bunch for the year already. It's funny, I don't know why I don't have that answer in my head.
Okay, well, I'm sorry to put you on the spot with the question. That's all I got.
Right, the number, these are small businesses, but in the CAP office, we have a really large number of complaints that we handle, because as you can imagine, these are issues that are going on with small businesses. They're also going on with individuals. So that's something to keep in mind too, by the way. If you individually have a consumer problem, you can contact our office too.
Great, thank you.
Awesome.
I appreciate it.
If there are any other questions, feel free to stop me, but I'll move along to the second service I'll say that we offer, which is a conversation on how to protect your business from scams. This is something personally that I am very passionate about, as I am the individual in our office who takes all reports of business scams. It's unfortunately something I've seen really negatively impact businesses, particularly this year. I think it can be really devastating, and I think it's really important to have a conversation about. Something I've seen in the last year is that I think that a lot of particularly really small businesses think that maybe they can't be affected by scams because they might think things like, I have such a small business, why would a scammer come after me? Or I don't even have that much money to lose, so they're not going to come after me. But the truth is that if you have a phone, if you have email, if you have a physical address, right? If you're a registered business, that you can be vulnerable to scams, and the best prevention for scams is education. And that's why I really want to talk to you all today about some scams that are impacting Vermont small businesses right now, and how to protect yourself and your business from scams. So when we look at a national level, right, in the United States, we see top company losses from phishing estimated about $17,000 a minute. Cost of ransomware events, $22,000 per minute, and security breaches at top companies. It's about $25 a minute. So this is an issue that is impacting businesses nationwide, and I'm sure globally as well. Let's look at, narrowing our view and looking at the scams that affected Vermont businesses in 2022. I will make sure I add in a disclaimer to say that we only have information based on businesses who reported this information to us. So what we really know is that likely this is a heavily underrepresented number of the impact that scams have on small businesses, because again, small office, one of one, these are just the scams that I personally took reports of, right? So when a business calls into me and needs help with a scam or just wants to report a scam to our office, this is that information. Again, likely really underrepresentative of actually, the impact that we're seeing from people who aren't reporting these scams. This is a look at all scams. So not just scams where businesses lost money, but these are scams in general. So when a scammer contacted a business, we take down this information and we have it in our report. The primary scam I'm going to talk about today is an imposter of business personnel. We're going to talk all about what that looks like and how to prevent this from happening. We see unauthorized listings. This would be like if a scammer impersonated your business in some way. We see a fake order of goods and services. If a scammer pretends to be a customer and is asking you for your goods or services. Business identity theft. We see a data security compromise. We're going to talk a little bit about that. Phishing, telemarketers, fake invoices. We see a lot. Fake representation of an organization or government agency. We've seen this happen quite a bit this year, right? So in 2023, because we'll see scammers impersonating the government, talking about like COVID relief funds for businesses or things like that. So all really good things to watch out for. When we narrow this down and look at the reports of business scams with loss. So these are reports that we receive where businesses have lost money. We see how that, there's so many different types of scams that are kind of contacting around businesses, but really there are only 2 types of scams in 2022 where businesses lost money. This creates a really unique situation because it really allows us to pinpoint where the vulnerabilities that we're seeing for small businesses in Vermont. And it's terrible that businesses are losing money in the first place, but this provides us with actually a really rare opportunity to provide direct education. So if you have a business, if you're thinking about starting a business, this is sort of the best way to protect yourself, because this is really how businesses are losing money. It is awful to say, but we saw 17 small businesses lose over $2 million last year to scams with loss. And like I said before, unfortunately, this is likely this is probably really underreported. So this number is likely actually much higher because, again, these are only the reports that we have in our office. And so what I really want to talk about today is this imposter of business personnel scam and what it looks like. And again, the only good thing about this is that it really is preventable with the right education and understanding of what's going on and how this could be impacting your business. So that's really what I want to focus on today. So how does this business imposter email compromise work? I'm going to give a couple of examples of how this how this scam works when you have more than one employee. But this can also, even if you're a solo entrepreneur, right? Only if you're the only person in your business, it also can affect you. So I will definitely talk about both. The scam starts when the scammer basically spoofs your domain or an email. They impersonate someone in your company or someone close to your company. So the scammer creates an email. It's an imposter scam, right? So they're disguising themselves to look like either someone in your business, or maybe it's a business representative. Maybe it's a business that you often do business with, right? So they're impersonating one person, and they send an email to high-risk employees at an organization. Who are high-risk employees? They're people who run the books, who do the finances, who have personal information, who have access to your business accounts. This could be you if you are a business owner. Maybe you have someone who does the books. Maybe your partner or your spouse does the books for you. It's someone who has that access to that information or to the money that these scammers want. And they're sending this email, and they're pretending to be someone within the business, someone connected to the business. The target, right, this high-risk employee, they receive the email and they act. The scammer's asking them to do something, and they act without reflecting or questioning the source, right? Why would they think that if it was a CEO, why would they think that the CEO, sending them an email to do something was somehow fake, right? If you didn't know. The damage is that, when this happens, this gives the hackers, these criminals, these scammers exactly what they want. And the result can be really devastating. It can result in financial loss, data theft, lawsuits, leadership dismissals, or reputational damage. I've unfortunately seen sort of all of these things happen to small businesses. So I think it can be hard sometimes to look at to explain that without kind of a specific example. So here's my little mock-up of what this scam might actually look like. So giving a real world example, my actual email, my personal business email is emily.mcdonnell@vermont.gov. I have 2 N's and 2 L's in my name. Now, a scammer who wants to take my financial information or my business's financial information is going to know exactly what my email is. And they're going to create an email just like mine, but maybe they skip an N, right? Because my domain is already taken. So they're going to create an email that says emily.mcdonnell, but has 1 L in it. And why would anyone notice that, right? They might even disguise their name, because you can adjust this in your inbox to have my correct spelling, right? So unless you were really looking at the email that it came from, you would never know that this was not me and in fact a scammer. So in my work setting, the scammer might contact the office admin, right? So they're going to contact the office admin pretending to be me. They might even have my signature, right? My exact signature. And they're going to say something like, "Dear office admin, I recently changed banks and have to switch over my direct deposit. Can you please send me my next, check to XYZ account?" Right? And so now what happens is that the office admin, without thinking of anything going wrong, is going to be sending all of my paychecks into a scammer's account until someone notices, right? And this creates layers of issues. It creates, obviously now the employee is losing money, right? I'm not getting my paychecks until I notice. So what are you going to do as a business? Do you now refund me and my checks? You're losing money. It causes all of these problems. Now, I want to make sure I am addressing this issue if you're a solo entrepreneur. So if you don't have any employees in your office and it's just you, you can replicate this situation with anyone that you might work with, right? So maybe it's a client, someone impersonating a client you've worked with before, and or maybe it's someone who you want to do business with and you think you're talking to papertowels.com, right? And it's actually a scammer or an imposter. And this is how Vermont businesses are losing money, unfortunately, every day. So let's talk about how we prevent this, how we prevent scams in general. The number one best thing that you can do is to train yourself and to train your employees. Your best defense is an informed workforce. The notion, the idea that you're only as strong as your weakest link, this is really relevant for this, right? So it is not enough for you to have the information. You want everyone who is involved in your business. So if that's other members of your office, you want to come back to them with this information, because it's really important that every single person in your office knows. Maybe if it's someone who helps you with the books, if you have a partner that helps you, talk to them about it. If you're the only one in your business, talk to anyone else around you in your community that you may be doing business with. It's really important to be as informed as possible. Something else you always want to do is check all your invoices closely, right? Anytime you're sending money, anytime you're asked to give money, never pay unless you know that the bill is for items that were actually ordered and delivered. And you want to tell your staff to do the same. We really want to develop a dual authentication for all transactions. So like in this scenario, right, dual authentication means that this is the first form of authentication because it's coming from an email. So the office admin might think, okay, they've asked me to do something. Before you change any financial information, you have to double check, right? So if you're in the office, if the office admin just walks down the hall into my office and says, hey, Emily, is this you? Did you ask me to change your information? Maybe they're picking up the phone and giving a call or sending me a Teams message or something like that from a legitimate, from a secondary communication strategy that they know to be legitimate. Using that dual authentication, right? That would stop it right away. You always want to check twice, right? Be tech savvy. Don't believe your caller ID, right? Gone are the days of the poorly spelled, phishing emails that you can clearly identify to be scams. These criminals are just that. It's an international crime syndicate organization who is likely trying to hurt your business, right? This really is a criminal act. They are very smart and they're very good at what they do. Do not believe your caller ID. Imposters can fake caller ID informations, so you're more likely to believe them if they claim to be a government agency or a vendor you trust, right? This comes into place with if you're the sole owner and operator of your business, right? Be really tech savvy and have a good understanding that we cannot believe our caller ID or a name that pops up on our email. We need to use that dual authentication to confirm the identity of folks that we may be working with, or maybe even in our own organization, and know who you're dealing with. Right? This is a great strategy for businesses, especially if you're doing business for the first time with somebody or with another business, right? Count on your community. Ask others in your industry, have you worked with this person before? Never send money to parties you can't verify before doing business with a new company. Search the company's name online or with the term scam or complaint. Call our office, right? We field these calls all the time. Call our office if you say, I'm about to do business. This seems maybe a little bit sketchy. I'm not sure. Can you help me confirm if this is a scam or not? We are more than happy to assist. We have stopped lots of scams through that method. So what do you do if the bad thing happens and your business is attacked? The very first thing that you want to do is to call your bank or your financial institution. And we say that this should be the first call because it is incredibly difficult to recover funds once you have been the victim of a scam. The only way that you would be able to recover funds is by stopping a transaction from happening. Usually we say within the first hour to 24 hours that a scam has happened. So if a scammer tries to take your money, immediately the first thing you want to do is call your bank, call your financial institution, ask them to freeze your account, to freeze the transaction. That would be the only way, 99% of the time, that is the only way you have a chance of recovering any funds if they've been lost. The second thing you might want to do is call our office, right? Call CAP 800-649-2424. We are fielding calls constantly to help you to connect to resources, to understand the scam, to make sure your business is continuing to be protected, to make sure that these scammers didn't get access to any of your other financial information or important information for your business. And we can talk about ways that you might want to continue to protect your business. This also helps us to collect these reports, which are so important, right? The only reason why we know that this imposter email scam is so prevalent for small businesses is because we are able to take those reports. And that's really important, again, for this education and prevention. It's also important to file a police report, and that's because this is a criminal issue, right? We really want to have ample reporting for these criminal issues that happen. It could be important down the line. Maybe if you have something like cyber insurance or anything like that, it's really important to develop that report. It's also important to file with the FBI and the FTC, the Federal Trade Commission. And that's because, like I mentioned, we're capturing data in Vermont, and that helps us to understand the trends, which again, I can't emphasize how important that is. The FBI and the FTC are who captures these trends nationally. And what we know, as I started in the start of this topic is that this is impacting businesses all over the country. Also, the FBI is the agency who would be investigating something like this, right? We talk about tracking trends, right? So if they have 500 businesses who all have the same type of scam, that's going to help them to hopefully track down and stop these scammers. And the last thing we suggest is to keep documentation of everything, right? That's going to be really important for your reporting. It's going to make it easier, and it's really important to kind of keep track of these things. So that information is nationally what is pretty recognized as steps that you should take if your business has been impacted by a scam. As I mentioned before, I've taken 100% of the calls in the last year from small businesses who have been the victim of a scam. And through that time, I have really noticed some things that I think slow businesses down in this process. And oftentimes, as I mentioned also at the top of the presentation, these small businesses have no idea that something like this could have ever happened to them. And it leaves them feeling really confused, really overwhelmed, and really unprepared. And so, whereas the information before is something, again, nationally that I would say, most agencies are going to recommend that you do, I kind of have this plan that I have suggested that maybe some Vermont businesses want to initiate, because again, I have personally noticed in my time that businesses are often really unprepared for something like this. And it slows down their process. It slows down time that they don't have, right? Time is really of the essence if you have been the victim of a scam. And really what I've noticed is that for small businesses who you all know, don't have the time of day to spend 5, 6, 7, 8 hours trying to figure out how to properly report a scam and further protect themselves. And when a business is not prepared, when they've been a victim of a scam, it can cause a real delay in being able to report this. It slows down your business. It's very emotionally stressful. And so what I have suggested is to create a scam plan, right? We never want a business to be scammed, but if they are, we want you to be as prepared as possible, so that you can protect your business when you've been a victim of a scam and go back to business as usual as quickly as possible. So some things that you might want to develop: who's going to call, all of the resources that I mentioned before, right? Who's going to report this? Who's going to provide coverage? And who's going to collect information? And I think that this is a good strategy for 2 reasons. One, because I think that, like I said, I think it's just good to be as organized as possible. And 2, having a conversation with your team, whoever your team may be, right? Maybe it's not an employee, but maybe it's someone that you confide in who might be able to help you. Having a conversation and assigning responsibility is really impactful and really helpful in prevention. We have actual data that allows us to know that when someone feels like they are protecting something, when they're a part of the solution, they are much more likely to identify scams. So if you have an employee and you say you are going to play this important role and you are going to be the information collector if we have a scam, that person is much more likely to feel that sense of responsibility and actually identify when a scam happens. So this is not something that you need. This does not need to be your scam plan, but I think it might be helpful to have something like this in your office. If it's a remote, maybe it's on a SharePoint, or maybe it's shared via email. I will send out copies of this after if you'd like to use something like this. Again, it doesn't have to be this particular plan, but I think it's really important. So there's a place here where you can assign personnel. It lists steps you can take. Again, having something like already having the number for your bank or your financial institution ready so you can make that call as soon as possible, really helpful. It has our number, a place for you to put your, local police station number on. It also has places where you can report fraud, any questions, so you can call. It has our website. So this is, where you can find all of our resources. It has a QR code and a place where you can find our website. So I wanted to make it as easy as possible, right, for you to have all the information in one place. And again, this is not necessary. This is simply things that I have picked up in my time in this position that I think could maybe be helpful to someone who is starting a business or who already has a business. So key takeaways here is that education is the best prevention, to put some type of plan in place for yourself, and to know who to call. And I know that's a lot of information, so I would love to field any questions you might have before we move on to the final part of our presentation.
There's a question in the chat from Rhonda, which you may have gone over a little bit, but just to reiterate it, I'll repeat it once. So the question is, what is the best way to protect your email, etc., to protect yourself? Are there free protection programs out there that we can utilize?
Great. So I know I covered it a little bit, but really and truly the best way to protect your email is to use that dual authentication method. It is, I think it can be really overwhelming to think about the fact that, any email you could be getting, I suppose, possibly could be fraudulent in some way, and it can be really difficult to protect your email, to be honest with you. That's why we really encourage folks to slow down and to be really mindful to not trust that caller ID, right? So if you're getting, maybe it's a suspicious email, but if you're getting any email where someone is asking you to send personal information or to send money, I think that it would be really beneficial in those two scenarios to do something like, you click on the name so that you can see the actual email, and double check, right? So say you're doing business with a new company, and some company emails you, it's doing something as simple as Googling it online and checking if the email is consistent that they have on the website, the email that you see, I think can be really helpful. And then in terms of any free services, I am sure that there are some available. I would not be able to recommend any particular business because of my role. But I'm sure that there are things out there, just like there are things like call blocking, spam filters. There are certainly ways to get around that. But as I said, these scammers are quickly evolving, and always coming up with new strategies. So I would say, regardless of any services that you might implement, to just always be extra diligent, particularly when anyone is asking for money or personal information. I hope that's helpful.
Rhonda, do you have any follow-up questions to that? Oh, nope, she says, thank you, Emily. If you do, Rhonda, feel free to unmute yourself and ask. It's fine. Nope, she says, I'm good. Okay.
Okay, good. Great. And I know it can be kind of information overload too. So I want to make it really clear that if you have any follow-up questions or anything down the line, that you can email me any questions you might have too. As I said, it's a lot of information to process, but it is really, really important.
And Emily, you're going to provide that scam plan template to us, right? So Sophia can include that in the emails to folks.
Yeah, so a copy of my presentation and a copy of that scam plan will go out, so that you can print that, you can have it digitally wherever you want. I have a lot of folks will just hang it somewhere in their office, right? And it's really good to kind of go through that with your team if you do have any employees. And again, you don't have to use it, but I just wanted to make sure I provided something that had kind of all of the information in one place.
Gotcha. Thank you very much. I do just want to very quickly circle back to something you had mentioned in that, and that is cybersecurity insurance. And that's something that folks may want to know more about. If you go to our CVOEO.org website and click on the Learn link there, you can scroll down to see micro businesses past video recorded presentations, such as this one. And you'll see one on insurance, and the presenter in there did touch on cybersecurity. So one of the things he indicated about that is if you have cybersecurity, one of the things that covers, which may be one of many things, but specifically, if you do have a cybersecurity incident and your customer's information is hacked, they can provide monitoring for, I think, up to a year for your customers, and try to help restore your brand. So, it's good, of course, if you are interested in cybersecurity, to confirm all that and understand all the benefits that you're getting with that policy. Also, Sophia, perhaps you can confirm or deny what I'm about to say, but we have an upcoming class, I think, towards the end of July, presented by the Vermont Law School, who's going to talk about financial risk management. And I think cybersecurity is included perhaps in that conversation. And folks can go again to our CVOEO.org website to see our upcoming classes and register there as well. Do I have that right, Sophia?
Yeah, that's right. So it'll be a 3-part series, and I believe cybersecurity is nestled right in between.
Okay,
the end
that's
of July.
great. Thank you.
It may not be on the website just yet, but you can look out for it in the next few weeks.
Okay, great. Thank you.
We also have a lot of information on cybersecurity. We have a webinar on our website as well from one of our assistant attorney generals who works with cybersecurity. That is listed on the Attorney General's website. So it's a little bit more technical, right? But it is great information. And actually, funny enough, my next my next slide here is about security breaches and cybersecurity. And I'm really glad you brought that up, and that service is going to be provided. This kind of moves into my next topic here that I can talk a little bit about if there's no more questions. Which is, and this will be much more brief here, but common questions in the consumer domain, right? So I actually think, cybersecurity and data breaches and things like that tends to be one of these questions we get. And I want to be really clear that this is, I think, one of the more interesting parts of my job. This is kind of like the third leg of my job, I guess. And that is to really act as a bridge in between some of this really heavy information that can seem really overwhelming in like state government in general and the day-to-day, business operations of a business. And I'm gonna give like 2 of probably tons of examples that I could address of some of these issues, or not issues, some of these pieces of information that might be valuable for businesses to know. I think that one of my job was created in 2017. The Small Business Initiative and the Small Business Advocate, my job was created in 2017 by one of our former attorney generals, TJ Donovan. And the real goal was to do a better job of connecting small businesses in Vermont with resources, and to really act as a communicator, a bridge in between all of the information that is available at the Attorney General's office, but really in state government and small businesses. And I think that it was sort of addressed that wasn't happening enough. And so my role on top of this mediation and on top of scam reporting is to really create that bridge and to make sure that businesses know that they can be supported. And there's all of these different, there's guidance and rules and regulations and legal terms, and it can all be really overwhelming. And one of my roles is to, again, act as that bridge to really help maybe someone who wants to start a business or someone who has a small business better understand some of these pieces of guidance or these rules, these regulations. We call it like that culture of compliance, right? We want to make sure that we're here to support businesses. And that's really my job. So again, I'm talking about these sort of two really specific examples, but there are so many different things that I could talk about. And I guess I just want to re-emphasize again that if you have any questions about really, like, I'm going to go ahead and say anything in state government, like one of the features of my role is to be a referral provider, right? So if you come to me and you have an issue and I'm not the one who can handle it, I'll make sure that we refer you to the right place. Or maybe you have a question about, you know, I read this thing online and I'm just not sure if this applies to me as a business, or I want to start a business and I don't know where to begin. You know, the last part of my job is really to communicate with businesses in that way, to try to create that bridge, which can otherwise be, I think, really overwhelming. And so I hope that comes across. And some of the things I'm going to talk about, I'm not an expert in, but I want to make sure that you get the information. And I learn so much when I interact with businesses, and a lot of times it's the business and I learning together as we try to solve these problems, and that's something that I really welcome. So definitely ask questions, and you can kind of come to me with any of these types of maybe guidance or rules or regulations or things you have questions about. Maybe you're not sure if it applies to you. An example of this would be security breaches in Vermont. A security breach can, you know, mostly goes hand in hand with scams, but I wanted to separate it as a part of the sort of like education and outreach aspect, because we're going to talk about some guidance after, but let's first define what a security breach is. It's defined as the unauthorized acquisition or the belief of an unauthorized acquisition of electronic data that compromises the security, confidentiality, or integrity of personal information maintained by a business. That is a wordy way of saying that a scammer or some other entity is stealing, takes your customers' information that may include something like social security numbers, medical records, financial information, genetic information. I think maybe people would be familiar with a security breach that happened at UVM Medical Center, right? Where a scammer, a hacker was able to get access to like thousands of people's medical information. And I think that's a really popular example that you might be familiar with. But to be honest with you, just like scams, security breaches can happen to any type of business. A tip that you might consider if you are currently a small business owner is to not have more of your customers or clients' personal information than you absolutely need. There are a lot of businesses who have like their customers' social security numbers on file when they don't actively need that information. What we say is like, get rid of that information in a safe way as best as possible, so that you have less information for scammers, you know, to take, right? That you have less vulnerabilities. I want to make sure that you all know, and again, this is interactive, so you'd be able to click on this link when you have access to the presentation. We have a whole data privacy and security page at the Attorney General's office. So you'd find the link to a webinar that we had for small businesses in cybersecurity, and some other information. And it sounds like Simeon is sort of running these programs that can additionally help. So those would be great resources. And if you have any specific questions, again, you can ask me. I'll make sure it gets to the right person. So now that we know what security breaches are, we can talk about Vermont's Security Breach Notice Act. So this is an example of a piece of guidance that we have for small businesses. So this is saying that small businesses need to abide by this type of rule. And it's a 14-day notice to the Attorney General's office. So a business is required to notify the Attorney General's office within 14 days of discovering or being notified of a breach. So when you realize, okay, I think that some of our customers' data might have been compromised, you want to let the Attorney General's office know. And this is so that we can protect the consumer's information, so that we can help you protect your information, make sure it doesn't happen again. And the notification, right, can be preliminary, it's kept confidential, it can be really simple. And again, you can find more of this information on this page. You can also email me, and I'd be happy to get you connected to the right person in the office. And there's a 45-day notice to consumers as well. So 2 weeks to notify the Attorney General's office. We hope that that would give you time to get settled and to make sure, you know, that you have a good understanding of what's going on, and then 45 days to let anyone who might have been affected by this know. So that's 45 days, and that's a notice to the consumers who could have been affected by a security breach. Now, again, this doesn't happen to every business. This is simply a piece of information that might be really good to keep in the back of your mind if something like this does happen, so that you know that you do have to report it and you know where you might have to report it. I don't think anyone on here is a contractor, and maybe someone can put in the chat if that's the case. So I don't want to spend much time on this. Rather, I'll use this as an example of what we might want to let businesses know, right? So again, this is actually an initiative from a different agency altogether. So this is an initiative from the Office of Professional Regulation at the Secretary of State's office. But because this impacts businesses, we, or myself as a small business advocate, you know, I want to help to let small businesses know that this might be impacting them. So if you're a residential contractor, we now have registration for residential contractors. They're now required to be registered in the state of Vermont. I think this is going to do so many good things for consumers and for businesses. And again, I don't want to go too much into it, but you can register right now on the Secretary of State's website. Maybe you know a contractor, and you can help them so that they know that they have to register in the state of Vermont now. I do see a chat. I want to make sure, I know I asked that question if there are any contractors. I'm wondering if someone can just confirm that there aren't, because otherwise I'm happy to stay on this much longer.
Emily, that was just me posting various resources to other.
Fantastic.
Yeah.
But yeah, again, so not necessarily maybe applicable to anyone in this group, but like a great example of a piece of information that we would want to say, hey, small businesses, just so you know, here is something that's really, really important, right? Registration and the requirement to register is really important. We want to get that information to you. And finally, again, to reiterate, 2 pieces of information amongst a lot of information that businesses might want to know. And so you can ask me questions, find more information. We have a small business resource center on our website. Again, when you have this presentation, you can go ahead and click here. I'm working on making this even more comprehensive and a little bit more user friendly, but there is some great information on there currently. And again, really the best way to contact our office or to contact our office with your small business questions is to email me or to call us. Something else I'm working on doing right now, this summer, I'm going on a listening tour. So I am going out into the business community to ask for feedback and to listen to some problems that businesses might be having. This could be, you know, small problems, big problems. I am really working with businesses to better understand some of the complex problems that they are going through. And so, you know, this can be consumer-based or larger. And if you have any of those concerns or questions, or you want to address anything with me, my inbox is always open. My phone is always available. So please feel free to, in addition to any questions you may have from this presentation, also send any feedback or things that you might be struggling with or resources that you're looking for. And I am happy to assist in any way possible. And I'll leave it open for questions. And thank you so much for your time, everyone.
Well, thank you so much, Emily. That was wonderful. Does anybody have any specific questions? I've got a few questions, but I'll table them until everybody else has had an opportunity to ask theirs. Novam, do you have any questions? Or Rhonda, do you? I mean, feel free to unmute yourself. Nope, I'm saying Novam is like, nope, she's good. Rhonda, how about you?
No, I'm good. This is very, very helpful, and I thank everybody for putting this on. I learned a lot and got a lot of great notes, and I look forward to receiving your emails with the information to take a deeper dive into it. And I look forward to working with everybody here.
Great. Thank you, Rhonda. Much appreciated and glad to hear it. Emily, a couple of questions. One, I tried to find that cybersecurity training link on the Attorney General's page, and I couldn't quite come across it. Are you able to provide that either in the chat or just include that link when you email Sophia the information?
Yeah, why don't I send that out in addition to the other resources that
Okay,
I'll be
great.
providing.
That's great. Thank you. And would you mind just popping back in your presentation to the contractor page?
Yeah,
Yeah.
absolutely.
So,
Can you all see this, even though my screen is up, or are you all looking at yourself?
yes, we see it. Yep. I just asked you to kind of bounce back to that because, you know, this video is going to have a second life online for people. And I just wanted to ask a few questions about this, kind of anticipating the benefit of those questions to people when they see it.
Yes, absolutely.
Yeah. So, so does this apply for all kinds of contractors, like folks that are electricians, plumbers, general contractors, or independent carpenters, people who install gutters, who install windows, et cetera, et cetera?
So there are decently specific pieces of guidance as to who is sort of captured in this group of residential contractors, but to be for sort of or a sweeping statement, if you will, it's all residential contractors who do projects that are $10,000 or more. And there are two different types of registrations, one of which is for solo contractors and individual, and the other is for a contracting business. So if you are a contractor and you are doing projects that are over $10,000 in Vermont, whether you're an independent contractor or whether you're a contractor with or a contracting business, you are required to register. And if you have questions about if you're included as a residential contractor or not, I would definitely encourage you to visit OPR's website. There is a plethora of more detailed information, certainly more detailed than I could give, about who may apply or who may have to apply to this.
Do you know offhand if painters are included in that list?
I don't know.
That's okay. That's okay. It's probably on there. And the kind of end result, because I think I'm going back to one of a conversation that you and I had, is that this became an issue because the buyer and the contractor didn't have contracts, and now this is helping to alleviate that by now requiring a contract. Is that correct? Am I correct with that or no?
Yes. So I will take the opportunity at this point to kind of explain maybe why this is coming to fruition, and why I listed here really the benefits of registration. So this is really born out of a large consumer issue that we've been seeing. I had mentioned it earlier in the presentation, but we see, home improvement is consistently at the top of our list for consumer issues. And what we have seen is, because there's no regulation, this really, it negatively impacts consumers because we see a large amount of loss happening for consumers. But this also really has been negatively influencing good actors in this industry, which they are. The majority of contractors in Vermont are good actors. And I think what has happened is that, you know, there maybe are some bad actors who are claiming to be contractors and who are, you know, charging maybe less money than a legitimate actor would. So they're getting that work, and then they're not doing the work, whether they're not doing it at all. So that would be home improvement fraud, or they're not doing the work to a certain standard. And we've seen this be really devastating to consumers. And we've seen it be really devastating to the industry of contractors. And so what this registration does, I mean, it's going to remove from the market bad actors who violate the law, right, or defraud homeowners. And we're talking about strict home improvement fraud. We're talking about someone knocks on your door and says, you're going to fix your roof, and they take $20,000 from you and they never do the work. But this is also going to help contractors if they have a dispute with a homeowner. And like you said, you know, that's because we're going to require, and there's going to be resources for people to have contracts, right? And insurance, right? So if you're going to be doing work, if you're a consumer, make sure that there's a contract, right? That will be required, as well as insurance. And that's going to be so helpful to the contractor and for the homeowner. I had mentioned previously, when we see complaints in our office not get resolved, it's oftentimes because there's something like a handshake deal, a verbal contract where there's not written information, clear lines. Is this going to open up clear lines of communication? This will also help to distribute, right, urgent or valuable information. When something like a global pandemic happens and we need to really quickly provide relief or contacts or important information to this industry, it's going to allow us to have that information available, which would be beneficial to contractors, to really to all actors here. And it's an advertising tool for home contractors. You are now going to be able to research, you know, contractors in my area and really be able to find that, which we know has been a problem, right? And so it will be a resource to consumers so that they can find someone who's qualified, that they know has been sort of vetted in some way, who's licensed, who has insurance. And for contractors, it will allow them to, you know, it's basically an advertising tool. It's going to be easier for folks to find them. So that's sort of my longer spiel, but I think I hope that provides an understanding of why we're doing this.
No, it does. No, that's great. Thank you very much.
Yeah.
I did provide a link, excuse me, to the Office of Professional Regulation in the chat box. And for those who are not familiar, they kind of seemingly fall under the umbrella of the Vermont Secretary of State. And you'll notice that there on that Office of Professional Regulation, there's a list of professions that are required to register with them. It's certainly not all business types, but there are specific businesses out there that are required to have information on file with them. For example, massage therapists and things of that nature. And out of curiosity, maybe you mentioned this, Emily, and I can't remember, but can folks go on to the Attorney General's office to see how businesses have responded to complaints, to know if, oh, this is a good place to work with and they seem responsible and accountable, or they're not?
So this is a great question, and a resource that I didn't really talk about too much. I mentioned this public record, right? Which is we take in all of this information, and I did, you know, I think make it clear that it's not like the Better Business Bureau where you could go type in the Vermont Attorney General's office, you know, business and find the information. But what we do in our office, if you call in, let's say it's a contractor, right? And you want to do business with the contractor. Hopefully this will change in the next year, right? This will be more available, but you want to do business with a contractor and you want to see if we mediated any complaints with them, you can call our office and say, hey, I'm thinking about doing work with XYZ contracting business, and I'm just wondering if you have any complaints on file. We're able to tell you how many complaints and the result of that complaint. We don't share personal information or, you know, the nitty gritty of exactly what happened. I think that's really important for, you know, the business sides of things too, which is to say that, you know, we don't want there to be sort of like unfounded, or we can't say like, oh, XYZ happened and it's true, right? But we can certainly say, we have 10 complaints in our office, and if 10 of them were not resolved, or the business never responded, that might be a really good indicator that maybe you want to find a business, you know, who maybe, even if they didn't have complaints in our office, but oh my gosh, 10 out of 10 are resolved, they really want to do the right thing here. It can be a really helpful tool. So we encourage folks to call in if you're going to do business with someone to confirm with us. And that helps to provide that understanding of the public record too, and how it acts and how it protects consumers and businesses at the same time, I think.
That's great. That's great to know, Emily. I'm glad I asked the question so people are aware of that. That's great. Good. Any other questions at this point? You've answered all of mine, Emily, so I do appreciate that.
Yeah, of course.
Novam, do you have a question? Oh, you have to unmute yourself.
So I was trying to type into, can you hear me?
I can, yeah.
I was attempting to chat here, but I'm a licensed massage therapist, independent contractor, and I'm registered with Vermont's OPR.
Mm-hmm.
If clients that receive massage therapy have a complaint with me or another therapist, would I send them to the attorneys general? Is that something that you work with?
That is a great question.
Because sometimes I come across clients that have a complaint about another massage therapist, and if they have a complaint with me, do I send them to you?
Yeah, it's a really great question. We like to make sure we define that the consumer does have to be the one who files the complaint, right? So let's say you were having a dispute with a client for some, or let's take your business out of it. Let's say you had talked to a new client and they had an issue with another massage therapist. The massage therapist couldn't file the complaint to say, we're having a dispute, can you help us solve the problem? It would be the consumer in the transaction who would have to file the complaint. But I would say if you are a business and you prefer to use our office as a means of communication, you could certainly suggest, hey, maybe we should do this in a more formal way. Are you familiar with this service? Maybe you want to use the consumer assistance program. I don't see why that would be a problem, but it just would have to be the consumer who would file that complaint. I hope that's helpful.
So they could either go to AGO, is that the attorney general's,
yeah,
or go to the Vermont, wherever they filed for the OPR to make a complaint?
So, and again, I apologize because different agencies, right? So I'm not, I would not be specifically privy to what specific services OPR may have. I don't believe that they have the same type of mediation process as we would. I know that we would like send individuals to OPR if they wanted to like report bad behavior or something like that, right? For industry or for a profession that OPR might regulate. But in terms of like mediating, solving problems between consumer and business, that would be something specifically our office would help with. And again, like if you had this, really specific question, I would say send it into our office, and we could, given your specific situation with your specific business or industry, could help you get in the right place there. I hope that's helpful.
Yes, thank you.
Yeah, of course, it can be so challenging. I mean, I think this is one of the reasons why my job is available, because, oh my gosh, there's all of these different state agencies. They all have different services, there's different responsibilities to maintain certain things, and it can be really confusing even for myself who works with all of these different agencies to say, oh, OPR does do this and the AGO does do that. So that's why I say, first and foremost, if you have questions, you can send them in and we can make sure we get you in the right place, because it can totally be kind of confusing to understand where to navigate, I think.
Yeah, thank you for helping me know where to navigate. Or have an
of course.
No, Balm, in case you didn't know, in the chat, I put a link into the OPR, a link that takes you to where to file a complaint with them.
Yes, I wrote down all of your links.
Okay, great.
Yeah, my notes here. Thank
Great.
you.
You're welcome. You're welcome. I'll just check in one more time. Are there any other questions for Emily? Nope. Sounds like we're good.
Yeah.
Well, Emily, thank you so much for presenting today. A lot of information that's very useful and helpful in a lot of different areas. And a lot of it was new for me, so I personally appreciate it. So thank you very, very much. And it's always nice to know where to turn to and that there is a place to turn to when there are issues. So I want to remind everyone that this information in this presentation will be emailed to you. And also just a plug for our future classes. I provided a link in the chat to micro business classes that you can register for. You can register for upcoming ones, and you can also go back and see pre-recorded ones. So take advantage of the opportunity.
Thank you.
Like, you bet. Emily, thank you so much. And if you don't mind, maybe Sophia and Emily